Avoidants fear losing themselves, not love. That's an important distinction because so many people mistake their distance or their tendency to pull away as a lack of interest, when in reality, it's often about something much deeper. An avoidant is not running from love itself, they're running from the fear of being consumed by it. They worry that if they let themselves get too close, they'll lose the boundaries that keep them safe, their identity will dissolve, and their independence will vanish. It's not that they don't want intimacy, it's that they associate intimacy with the risk of suffocation. This fear shapes the way they act in relationships, and understanding it is the key to communicating with them in a way that makes connection possible. Think about it this way: someone who is avoidant grew up, often unknowingly, learning that closeness comes with strings attached. Maybe they had experiences where affection meant control, or love meant sacrifice without balance, or vulnerability was met with disappointment. So as adults, they guard their freedom fiercely. They crave the beauty of companionship, but the moment they sense that being with someone might erase their individuality, alarms go off in their head. Their instinct is to create space, not because they've stopped caring, but because they're trying to protect their sense of self. If you interpret that space as rejection and chase harder, it only confirms their fear and makes them retreat further. The truth is, avoidance can fall deeply in love, sometimes more deeply than they're willing to admit. What they need is reassurance that they can have love without losing themselves. That reassurance doesn't come from words alone, it comes from the way you carry yourself in the relationship. When you show that you have your own passions, your own world, and that you're not asking them to give up theirs either, you start to dismantle the walls they've built. For them, love must feel like a choice, not a trap. The moment it feels like they are being cornered or obligated, they begin to associate closeness with danger instead of comfort. So instead of demanding more time, more texts, or more attention, you flip the script. You create moments where love feels like an invitation, not a negotiation. You share your joy, you invite them into your life without needing them to be the center of it, and in that freedom they feel safe to step closer. It may sound paradoxical, but the less you chase and the more you embody independence with warmth, the more attractive you become to an avoidant. They go from fearing that love will swallow them whole to realizing that love with you can actually enhance their life without erasing it. At the end of the day, the biggest misunderstanding with avoidance is that they don't want connection. They do. What they don't want is to feel powerless inside of it. Love, to them, should be expansive, not restrictive. Once you begin to see their pullbacks not as rejection, but as a signal of fear, you can respond with understanding instead of frustration. And when you do that, when you make them feel that being close doesn't cost them their independence, you give them the one thing they've always craved, but never trusted they could have: a love that doesn't take away who they are, but adds to it. When you're dealing with someone who has avoidant tendencies, one of the biggest mistakes people make is applying pressure. Pressure can look like a lot of things: asking for constant reassurance, demanding more time than the person is ready to give, or framing closeness as an obligation instead of a choice. When you do that, you trigger the very instinct an avoidant is trying to protect: the fear of being consumed, controlled, or losing their sense of independence. And once that alarm bell goes off in their mind, they don't move toward you, they retreat. That's why the key shift is to stop pressuring and start inviting. An invitation is radically different from pressure. Pressure corners someone into doing something they don't feel ready for. It makes them feel like they're being tested, graded, or failing if they don't respond in a certain way. An invitation, on the other hand, gives them the option to step closer, and when they choose to do it, it feels genuine. For example, imagine saying, "Why don't you ever text me back quickly?" versus saying, "I always love it when I hear from you." The first statement communicates impatience and creates resistance. The second communicates openness, positivity, and gives them the space to act without feeling controlled. Invitations inspire while pressure demands. Avoidants often crave love just as much as anyone else, but they have learned through experience that closeness can feel unsafe. Sometimes they grew up in environments where love felt conditional or where intimacy was tied to control or criticism. So when someone comes at them with pressure, even in small doses, it confirms their deepest fear that getting close means losing freedom. That's why inviting instead of pressuring is so powerful. It flips the script. Instead of reinforcing the idea that love will suffocate them, you show them that love can feel expansive, joyful, and voluntary. Think about how much more magnetic it feels when someone gives you a choice. If you're invited to a party, you're excited to go because it's your decision. But if you're told you have to go, even if it's to the same event, you're already dragging your feet. Relationships with avoidance work the same way. If you pressure them to spend time with you, they resist. If you invite them into a moment, I'm doing this later, I'd love for you to join. Suddenly the ball is in their court, and many times they'll surprise you by leaning in. Another reason invitations work is because they communicate strength. You're showing that you don't need to grab or cling. You can offer connection from a place of abundance. That confidence is incredibly attractive. When you don't pressure, you're not only respecting their boundaries, you're subtly saying, I'm worth choosing, and I trust you to step forward. Avoidants, who are used to feeling suffocated or cornered, find that kind of energy irresistible. It reassures them that they can be close without being trapped. So if you want an avoidant to go crazy for you, remember this simple but profound truth. Don't pressure, invite. Speak in ways that open doors instead of closing them. Frame your desire for connection as a gift, not a demand. Make them feel that being close to you enhances their freedom instead of stealing it. When you master that shift, you'll find that avoidants who once ran at the first sign of intensity will begin to surprise you by stepping closer, not because they have to, but because they truly want to. When it comes to dealing with avoidant personalities, one of the most powerful shifts you can make in the way you relate to them is learning how to highlight your independence while sharing connection rather than trying to highlight love itself. Love, when spoken about directly or too soon, can feel heavy for someone who struggles with intimacy. An avoidant is not running from the possibility of love. They are often running from what they perceive as losing their sense of freedom or identity inside of it. When you tell someone, I love you, in a way that feels like a plea, a test, or a demand for reciprocity, it puts pressure on them. It makes them feel cornered, like they are being asked to step into a room and lock the door behind them. That is why many people experience the frustrating push-pull dynamic with avoidance. Every time love is spoken about with weight, the avoidant feels trapped rather than inspired to come closer. The better way, the way that draws them in, is to focus on connection without putting the word love in bold letters. That means instead of constantly reminding them how much they mean to you, you demonstrate that you have a full, vibrant life that you enjoy, and you simply extend invitations for them to share in it. Think of it this way: if you say, I love you, I need you, I can't live without you, the subtext is dependence. For an avoidant, that's like hearing an alarm bell. But if you say, I had an amazing time at this place today, I'd love to take you there next time, the subtext is freedom and joy. You're showing that you already know how to create happiness on your own, and you're offering them a chance to step into it. This not only protects your own self-worth, but it reassures them that being with you won't erase their individuality. This is where so many people make a mistake in relationships. They think that proving love is about constant verbal reassurance, constant closeness, constant reminders that they care. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, this becomes noise they want to escape. What they crave, often silently, is the kind of partner who has their own identity intact, who doesn't require daily confessions of love to feel secure. By highlighting independence, you're essentially telling them, I am whole, I am fulfilled, and I invite you to share in this fullness. That's magnetic because it creates an environment where they can step forward without fear of losing themselves. It's also important to notice that when you highlight independence, you change the dynamic of power in the relationship. Instead of being the one who chases, who needs, who demands, you become the one who attracts. Independence is attractive because it signals strength. Avoidants are sensitive to pressure, but they are also drawn to energy that doesn't require them to carry the entire emotional load. When you bring that balance, your own hobbies, friendships, passions, and goals, you are sending the message that you are not trying to replace your life with them, but rather to enrich it by sharing experiences together. That is when the avoidant begins to feel safe leaning in because they know your happiness does not rest entirely on their shoulders. Highlighting independence while sharing connection means speaking the language of freedom. It means saying, I'm excited about what I'm building and I'd love for you to be part of it. Instead of saying, you're the only thing that matters to me. It's about creating moments where they see that closeness with you doesn't equal suffocation. This approach doesn't just work for avoidance, it actually creates healthier relationships in general because it keeps both people whole and authentic. When you shift from trying to prove love to simply inviting connection, you make space for love to grow naturally, without fear, without pressure, and without resistance. When you're dealing with someone who has avoidant tendencies, one of the most important things to understand is that control is the enemy of connection. The moment they sense that your words or actions are designed to trap them, they instinctively back away, not because they don't care, but because pressure threatens their sense of freedom. It is tempting to believe that if you love them harder, if you remind them constantly of how much you care, they'll feel safe and come closer. But the truth is, avoidants don't respond to declarations of love when they're framed as proof, reassurance, or obligation. They respond to warmth, and warmth is very different from love as we often express it. Warmth is not about saying, I love you so much, why don't you love me back in the same way? Warmth is about creating an environment where they feel good around you, where they feel respected, and where closeness is something they want instead of something they feel forced to reciprocate. Think of it this way, love without warmth can sound like need. You can tell someone you love them every day, but if the way you say it is wrapped in tension or expectation, it doesn't feel like love to them. It feels like pressure. Warmth, on the other hand, is effortless. It's in your tone, when you speak, the way you laugh easily, the way you listen without trying to fix them or pin them down. Avoidants are hypersensitive to the difference between someone who is sharing joy with them versus someone who is using love as a lever to demand closeness. When they feel warmth, they relax, they drop their guard, and they actually become more open to emotional intimacy. That's why using warmth instead of control is such a powerful shift. This doesn't mean you avoid expressing your feelings or that you hold back affection. It means you deliver it in a way that removes the hidden agenda. Instead of saying, I love you, so you should spend more time with me, you say, I had such a great day and I thought of you, it made me smile. The first is control disguised as love. The second is warmth inviting connection. Notice the difference. One demands a response, the other simply shares a positive moment. An avoidant feels suffocated by the first but intrigued and comforted by the second. They start associating you with good feelings, not pressure. That association is what makes them come closer naturally, because the connection with you becomes a place of ease rather than a battlefield of expectations. The great irony is that when you stop trying to control an avoidant, you actually gain more influence over how they show up in the relationship. Warmth is magnetic. It gives them permission to approach at their own pace, which paradoxically makes them want to approach faster. Your calmness, your lightness, and your ability to enjoy moments without needing constant reassurance make them feel safe. Safe people are attractive to avoidants. They don't want to be managed. They want to be met with presence and acceptance. And when they feel that, they often surprise you by offering more closeness than you thought possible. So the next time you're tempted to prove your love louder, remember that what an avoidant craves is not a louder declaration, but a softer invitation. A smile instead of a sigh, a playful comment instead of a complaint, a story that brings them into your world without demanding they stay there longer than they're ready for. That's warmth. And that is what allows them to feel both free and connected at the same time. It's not love expressed as control that keeps an avoidant close. It's the warmth that makes them feel like choosing closeness is their idea all along. Tone is everything, not love. That sounds strange at first, because we've been told that love is the ultimate glue that holds people together. But when you're dealing with someone who's avoidant, someone who instinctively pulls away the moment they feel trapped, your tone can either build the bridge or burn it down. Love may be the feeling that motivates you, but tone is the delivery system that determines whether that love actually reaches them or bounces off their defenses. You can have the purest love in the world, but if it arrives in a tone of desperation, accusation, or control, it won't land as love, it will land as threat. And avoidants respond to threat with distance. Think about it. If you tell someone, I just don't understand why you can't call me more, why you can't show me you care, you may mean those words from a place of longing, from a place of wanting closeness, but the tone is one of pressure. An avoidant doesn't hear, I love you, I want you. They hear, you're failing me, you're suffocating me. The message gets distorted, not because your feelings aren't real, but because the emotional package you delivered it in sets off their alarms. On the other hand, when you say with a relaxed and light energy, I love when you reach out, it always makes me smile. You're conveying the same desire for closeness, but in a tone that invites rather than demands. That difference is everything. Tone matters because avoidants are hypersensitive to judgment and control. They grew up or learned in life that closeness can equal pressure, responsibility, or even pain. So they scan your voice, your words, your body language for signs that being close to you will cost them their freedom. If your tone communicates tension, neediness, or frustration, it reinforces their fear that intimacy equals danger. But if your tone communicates warmth, playfulness, and confidence, it rewires their brain's reaction. They start to associate closeness with safety, fun, and choice. In that moment, you're no longer the person trying to pull them in, you're the person they want to come closer to. There's a subtle magic in the way you can use tone to shift the energy of a conversation. Playfulness softens edges. Humor diffuses tension. A calm voice signals that you are in control of yourself and that you don't need them to regulate your emotions. An avoidant finds that deeply reassuring because it tells them they can be with you without drowning in your expectations. The more secure they feel in your energy, the more likely they are to lower their guard. And here's the paradox: the less you push, the more they lean in. The less your tone carries fear, the more they can feel your love. People often believe that to win over an avoidant, you have to show more love, prove more loyalty, or keep reassuring them that you're not going anywhere. But in truth, those words don't matter if your tone doesn't align with them. You can say, I love you 100 times, but if it's said with exasperation, anger, or anxiety, the love gets lost in translation. Conversely, you can say something as simple as, I had the best time today, with a relaxed smile, and that tone can do more to draw an avoidant closer than a grand declaration ever could. So the real secret isn't about piling on more love, it's about mastering how your love is expressed. Tone is the channel through which your care, your attraction, your affection, and your respect actually reach them. Without the right tone, love feels like pressure. With the right tone, love feels like freedom. And for someone who fears closeness, the moment love feels like freedom is the moment they go crazy for you. When it comes to winning the heart of someone with avoidant tendencies, one of the most overlooked truths is that they are constantly torn between two opposing forces: their craving for intimacy and their deep fear of losing themselves in that intimacy. That is why blending safety with respect becomes the ultimate key. Safety alone isn't enough, because if they feel safe but not respected, they will still feel suffocated. Respect alone isn't enough, because if they feel respected but not emotionally safe, they will remain distant. It is the careful combination of both that unlocks their willingness to step closer and, in fact, makes them eager to do so. Safety, in this context, means creating an environment where an avoidant feels they won't be judged, criticized, or manipulated for who they are and the pace at which they want to move. Imagine how it feels for someone who values independence when they are constantly met with questions like, why don't you open up more? Why don't you say how you feel? That interrogation may come from a place of love, but it doesn't feel safe. It feels like being backed into a corner. Instead, safety is communicated when you say things like, I enjoy being with you, and I value the moments we share. This simple expression gives reassurance without putting pressure on them to be different from who they are. It signals that their way of loving, even if slower or more measured, is acceptable and appreciated. Respect, on the other hand, is about acknowledging their boundaries and individuality. Avoidants often fear being engulfed by a partner's needs or expectations, so respecting their space becomes vital. That doesn't mean tolerating neglect or erasing your own needs, but it does mean approaching them with a spirit of curiosity instead of control. Saying, "I respect the way you need time to recharge, and I also want to find ways for us to connect that feel good to both of us," strikes the balance. It tells them that their independence isn't being threatened, while also showing them that closeness is possible without them feeling trapped. Respect, in this sense, becomes the bridge that allows them to see love as something that enhances their freedom rather than erodes it. When you put safety and respect together, you are essentially telling the avoidant partner, you are free and you are valued. You don't have to hide parts of yourself to be accepted here. That message is profoundly healing for someone who has built defenses precisely because they fear rejection and control. It transforms the dynamic from one where they are constantly on guard into one where they begin to lean in, not because they are forced to, but because they want to. This is where they truly go crazy for you because you've created a rare experience in their world, a relationship where intimacy does not equal loss of self, but rather an expansion of it. The beauty of this blend is that it not only draws them closer, but it also elevates you. When you learn to provide safety while holding on to respect, you naturally stop chasing pleading or demanding. Instead, you embody confidence and emotional maturity. You show them that you are someone who values yourself enough not to beg and values them enough not to pressure. This balance shifts the entire relationship dynamic from one of anxiety to one of magnetism. And that's why avoidants who are often misunderstood and mishandled will find themselves unexpectedly and irresistibly drawn to you when you communicate in this way.